Formed from a famous talent show, they're an idol group on the rise with unstoppable momentum. The group is called Face, spelt F/Ace. They're our heroine's bias, with the pink-haired member, Tamo, dedicating this next part to all the girlfriends nationwide. Utage Kinoshita is blown back. She thought he was a god. She thought she was going to die, but with that close-up, she could probably live a few more years. Her family was one you might expect of the typical super idol-obsessed girl. Her parents thought it was nice that their daughter had interests, and that it was quite amusing. Her younger sister, Komare, thought she was crazy and scary. And her younger brother, Yamato, was looking down on Utage for never even having met her beloved Tama. He thought it was more practical to focus on his studies. At 16 years old, Utage was just a high schooler indulged by her family, who saw her bias as emotional sustenance. She believed Taman could save the world today with his handsome face. She lined up her acrylic stands of him at the perfect angle, staring at her impressive collection of his merch. She thought not only could his face kill, but he was way too sexy to be a high school senior. He was Face's sexy and wild member, with top-notch dance skills comparable to professional dancers, and constantly impregnated girls nationwide in their minds? Hey yo, ladies, is that what you're thinking about your favorite idols like Jungkook or Jimin? Let me know in the comments for research. She smiled, staring at his appearance in the talent show 2 years ago, where he said he wanted everyone in the whole world to smile. She got startled, receiving the upcoming Face Dome concert lottery result notification. Giddy with anticipation, knowing the odds of getting drawn were 95 to 1, it was very hard to get. No matter what the result, she prepared to accept it. Her jaw dropped, seeing the message inside. She won! Utage's supervisor apologized, having called her to fill in on her day off. Miss Toda was currently in the hospital due to appendicitis, so Utage was asked to take care of her client during this time. Utage brightly accepted. She of course needed more money to support her bias. She started part-time housekeeping originally because it worked with her schedule, but now she's also gotten quite used to it. She saw her client's name listed as Tamon Fukuhara, the exact same name as her beloved Tamon. She drooled, imagining him whispering to her, "Keep it a secret for me, kitten," but knew there's no way her Delulu fantasy could be true. Entering the disgustingly dirty apartment, she was caught off guard by her client sitting fetal position in a corner, but easily recognized the face imprinted in her retina daily. With her telling him she was going to vacuum, he hid further into his hoodie and affirmed it was okay. She considered the idea he might be surprisingly introverted in private. She shortly came back to ask for the laundry detergent and found him curling and shaking over the fact he wasn't told someone so young would be coming. He couldn't get into idle mode at home. He didn't know what to do. She thought he was super gloomy, that she probably wanted a stink bug to kill him. He assumed the worst, thinking that she'd write a post making fun of him, that he was a friendless loser, that he'd become a laughingstock, and the fans who once supported would brand him a traitor. He imagined himself getting shanked at night and left to bleed out, and thought life would be better if he were never born. Watching him cry, Utage wondered if this guy really was Tamon. Was he really the visual serum Tamon? She tried coping as she worked, telling herself with the upcoming Dome concert, he must just be tired. She panicked, thinking he might retire from mental exhaustion. She'd die for sure. She admitted she's been a loyal follower since the talent show 2 years ago. And even knowing maybe she shouldn't say this, she told him she was glad he was born and decided to become a singer. He apologized, knowing since she liked him this much, seeing him now, her image of him must be shattered. He thought an imposter like himself didn't deserve anyone's support. Utage froze, thinking about all the fans who supported him just like her. She was angry, asking if he was looking down on their adoration. She brandished her idol fans and went into a delusional rant about how he turned their world into heaven, how he was handsome, smart, and unparalleled. To her, he was a god, and the idea of that was indisputable. She shouted, "Tamon is a god, an emissary of love who came down to earth for all young girls. He's also an angel." She wanted him to repeat after her, even if it was the man himself. She wouldn't bow down to a Tamon anti-fan. She didn't think someone with this kind of personality would want the image he portrayed on stage. And he didn't. It was the agency that set his persona. There is someone he looked up to. Though he thought of it as utterly presumptuous, he wanted to be like that person and make everyone smile. Utage remembered that's what he said at the talent show. She believed even if his cheerfulness was an act, it wasn't fake. His real intent was why he was able to move so many people. When she told him he wasn't an imposter, he got a vision of his manager telling him she didn't need the real him and to not show his true self to others. He curled up again, saying after he became popular, all sorts of people started criticizing him, so he gradually lost faith in what his fans said. He couldn't trust what he wanted to believe, and he felt so ashamed of himself for that. The person he trusted least of all was himself. He wanted to go deeper into the jungle or on a secluded island and live without humans all alone. But Utage would point out how he was just talking about his dream, and if he couldn't believe himself, she was going to keep supporting him until he did. She was going to cheer for Mr. Gloomy Hara. On the Face YouTube channel, Tamon introed himself as the missionary of love and positivity, the sexy and wild member of the group. And despite the next guy being the youngest, Aori Sakaguchi told the fans they could rely on him. He was the prince in the group. Natsuki Ishibashi was cheerful and cute. He was everyone's angel. Keito Tachibana loved rice balls. He was the leader of Face. And lastly, Rintaro Kai only coldly referred to himself as Kai-des. Utage was somewhat at a loss that this Tamon was the same guy. Doing the cooking, she was surprised to see how empty his fridge was last time. The trash was full of instant noodle bowls too. He quickly apologized for spending money recklessly and creating so much trash when he was trash himself. Utage didn't mean it that way. She was just impressed by how he could sing and dance while living like this. She presented his food, and he started to go into a panic, imagining a scenario where he'd choke on it and die. He saw her as a demon, but he'd quickly grab and eat the food turned away, and he turned back. Idle mode turned on! Leaning over her, he told her, "This is bad. This is just what I like. Can I lick it clean here?" This got Utage bright red, and even though he was referring to the fried chicken, she exploded. Utage Kinoshita, 16 years old, passed away today. Cause of death? Tamon was too erotic. Tamon went back into gloomy mode because she frightened him, but she argued she was the one who was frightened. She didn't know he could switch modes so suddenly. He apologized because he's been so busy lately that his switch sometimes acted up. He started hyperventilating and fell over. How much effort did it take to perfectly meet fan ideals? Even so, Utage thought he still did, and he worked hard to make everyone smile. She fed him spring rolls for dinner, and that day, during his show appearance, when the host told him he was giving off particularly strong pheromones, he answered it was because of the delicious tuna spring roll he had recently. Utage remembered, and Tamon got so embarrassed hearing himself say that on TV. Later, Tamon would shakily approach Utage, bringing up that his manager told him to take home selfies for the fan club, but couldn't switch modes at home. He needed her help. Utage, having learned Tamon instinctively responded to cheering fans, she pulled up her fan, and he instantly switched modes, telling her he was aiming for her heart. She ended up helping him get plenty of alluring home selfies, and had to slap herself to keep her hormones under control. He thanked her. Because of her help, he didn't have to throw up trying to take photos. However, Utage never got tired of seeing his handsome face. No matter what, in her eyes, he was the best in the world, and she wouldn't back down from that claim. As she began her leave for the day, he thanked her for everything, telling her it was like his mental state has been promoted from filth to old trash. Fans always complimented him, and every time he heard it, it made him happy. Utage started to tear up, and Tamon worried he said something wrong again. She told him he was misunderstanding. She wasn't getting complimented by Tamon, but instead by Gloomy Hara, so she was especially moved. He turned back and told her it was all thanks to her for scolding him so often. Utage's heart beat rapidly as her bag dropped. She gushed, hearing Supernova song lyrics in her mind. But due to a misunderstanding, Tamon tightened his hoodie around his face, apologizing for his gross smile. She rushed, trying to uncover his face because it was such a waste. She ended up falling over him, drooling over his clumsy smile. But their moment was ruined by a visitor. Tamon's manager, Wataru, was furious, telling Utage to know her place. She apologized and ran out, wondering what she was doing. Being driven by her desires, she pounced on a national treasure. She felt guilty She felt she shouldn't be supporting Mr. Gloomy Hara. It should only be Tamon. At school, Utage's friends read a news report about an idol being victimized by a stalker, claiming the stalker even came into his house and hugged him. When Riko said that's why she couldn't stand low-class girlfriend fans, Utage replied, that's right, the girl was so out of line she should die of stupidity. Yuina then flashed this month's Tamon photos, adding that the amount of skin shown was her happiness index. Utage went into a daze, gushingly thinking about how much of a zombie he was at home. With her falling over, her friends had no idea what was wrong. Utage didn't know what to do. These images kept replaying in her mind. The next time she saw him, she was sure she'd fall even harder. She was afraid she'd pounce on him again. Tamon would hear the doorbell ring and got up, excited to see Utage, but was instead met with Miss Toda, his usual housekeeper. He sighed and hid himself as she rambled on. Utage was glad Miss Toda was back from surgery. She felt it was time for her to go back to being a fan from afar. On the night of the Dome concert, Face gave their intro to thousands of fans. They would do their bit, with both Tamon and Auri blowing their kisses to the crowd. As the girls continued to cheer, Utage knew Face would definitely become the face of this era. As they performed their hit song Supernova, Utage screamed that Tamon was so cool, and Tamon heard it, finding the one sign in the crowd that was hers, reading Tamon Colt. It warmed his heart. During show intermission, Utage considered getting a drink before going home. She was excited and sad at the same time. She had mixed feelings. She suddenly got grabbed and taken backstage. It was Tamon, staring at her, sweating and gasping. He told her he saw her, and she started tearing up, hearing he recognized her amongst all his fans. He wiped her tears, telling her that he wanted to make everyone smile. Making her cry, he asked if it had to do with why she wasn't coming to his house anymore. He backed her against the wall, as she told him any fan would want to know him more. That's why she couldn't have him all to herself, or she might do something that would put him in a difficult position. He told her that was for him to decide. He didn't want her to say that. Grabbing her and putting his head on her shoulder, he wanted her to support him by his side, and he couldn't live without her anymore. She couldn't tell him no like this. She told him, okay, and he quickly jumped away, covering his face. So she scolded him, saying the show wasn't over, so he couldn't switch modes. He had to go back and finish, and that she'd be cheering him on. He turned back, face blushing as she left. She was also just as much of a mess. Skipping through the streets, Utage felt as thrilled as ever, all because Face was finally having a fan interaction event. Spending her life savings on all those CDs had to be worth it. She was going to need to scrub down her body extra hard and also get some new clothes, which meant she'd be working her butt off. As she walked into Tamon's house, she didn't expect to see him struggling with his manager, insisting that he wanted to retire. Wataru would have to take a call outside from another one of the idol members. Babysitting these kids was a real chore. On the other hand, tears were already rolling down Utage's cheek. Hearing that Tamon wanted to quit, the thought of a meet and greet made him so nervous, he felt he was gonna throw up. She tried to remind him of his dream of wanting to make everyone smile, but his mind would spiral, thinking about how he'd have to talk to so many people. He imagined his fans would be grossed out by his sweaty hands and say, well, mushroom farm. He didn't even understand what the hell sexy and wild meant. What's so good about a guy who could get arrested for sexual harassment at any time? Even questioning why people would use up their life savings to buy his CDs. Utage snapped. Who the hell was he to talk down about Tamon's hand sweat, or even breathing the air around him? She immediately calmed down, seeing how she almost pushed him down again. If he was going to do this, it had to be done right. Tamon wanted to do everything he could to not let his fans down. With that being said, Utage brought out a box filled with 2 years worth of magazines, interviews, blogs, and internet articles she had saved up. She also had documents of everything he had said on TV and in all the media. Even a sutra notebook that she used to feed her delusions. Wow, she is really delulu. Do any of you ladies do this? Leave it in the comments and explain. With all this, he'd probably be able to pull through, and she'd be able to attend the meet and greet in peace. He then asked her for some help with simulations for the event. Enjoying such bliss for free was something she could do. That was until he started calling himself trash. Now, she was ready to offer up all her time in this life and the next. Moments later, Utage tried to keep it together as she gave her support. Like a switch, idol mode was back on. Tamon pulled her in from the waist, telling her, I'll never let you switch Oshis. She was so excited that she exploded again, causing Tamon to return to Mr. Gloomy Hara. He apologized for hurting and relying on her so much. Honestly, this made Utage very happy. Whenever she was going through hard times, Tamon's face was always there to lift her spirits. So there was nothing that made her happier than being of help to him. She'd happily go through all the moments of her head exploding, and wouldn't mind giving up her life to support him. However, he'd use up too much energy, causing him to cough up blood. While he took a break, Utage let him know she'd be coming to the meet and greet as well. He hoped she'd be able to score his performance. With his cute expression, she'd explode once more. On the day of the meet and greet, the venue was stacked with girls who were all hyped up. Thousands of people, and they all loved Tamon. While he was making heads explode, Utage had to make sure her jealousy wouldn't ruin this day. Suddenly, two girls in front of her started arguing. Utage tried to remain peaceful, but she couldn't let such things happen when Tamon was here. Anyone who dirtied Tamon's divine ears had no place in this world. Unexpectedly, security would throw the three of them out. And just like that, Utage's paradise was taken. On the train ride back, she thought it was all good, so far as Tamon was happy. To make up for her losses, she planned to drown herself in work. Once she walked into the office, her supervisor pointed her to a special guest waiting for her. Of course, it was none other than Tamon. Definitely not an illusion. He was really upset about her not attending the meet and greet. Embarrassed, she claimed it was because she lost her ticket. Regardless, her promise needed to be kept. Tamon was willing to respond to any request she had. She asked him to be her Tamon for just this moment. His response? A cold no. Without even thinking twice, he reverted to gloomy Hara, complaining about how he wanted her praises. He was waiting that whole time so she could see the fruits of his labor, hoping it would make her happy. Surprisingly, this got Utage's heart racing fast. A perfect score for him. During lunch break, Riko and Yuina were talking about the meet and greet. Due to how close the idol group was getting to their fans, Yuina feared their bias might end up meeting a fangirl in private. If this happened, she and Riko happily agreed to kill the girl. As for Utage, she was dragged into their killing plans without a choice. Knowing full well she was the main culprit, she had to keep it a secret. When she got to Tamon's place, she'd see him crying by the corner of the room. Apparently, he'd soon be going on a show where the viewers would rate stylish celebrities. Hearing this, she was thrilled for him, but Tamon feared this was the end. The clothes he was wearing were the only clothes he owned. Utage would encourage him, saying the fans wouldn't mind his lack of fashion sense. Although she liked the gloomy Hara look, she didn't want to miss the chance to show off his great physique. So, they'd head off to buy some clothes. While she was waiting at the mall, he'd meet up with her with a paper bag over his head. Using all the info and perspective she had as a fan, Utage planned to come up with the best look. This was her duty. Taking a peek in the dressing room, she was knocked out by how hot he looked in these new clothes. No matter the outfit, he could make it all work. With one of the outfits, she'd have to help him with putting on a necklace. Afterwards, they'd head to a cafe, which Utage sometimes visited on her way home from school. Seeing the guys who were hanging out at another table, Tamon felt a bit jealous. Utage admired the fact that someone as amazing as him would enjoy stuff normal people liked. When it came to going out with his group, Tamon's expression said all she needed to know. Riko and Yuna suddenly approached her, causing Utage to panic. Tamon introduced himself as her friend, and Riko suspected he was her boyfriend and insisted he show his face. But he'd suddenly grab Utage's hand, and they'd run out through the streets, like this was some kind of secret date. Once they got away, Utage immediately apologized for putting him in potential danger from the paparazzi. For this, she was ready to receive capital punishment. She could never forgive herself, and vowed to stay at least 3 meters away from him from now on. He took off the paper bag, asking if she liked him. The answer was obvious, but she was still blown away to dust because of his handsomeness. A few days later, his outfits were praised as #1 for having a boyfriend look. When next she came to his apartment, he looked roasted. She'd immediately freshen him up to preserve his handsome looks. It turned out that he was trying to make a simple rolled omelet, but the outcome wasn't even decent enough to be shown. Tamon threatened to go on hiatus, just so he could learn how to fry an egg. Utage immediately reminded him that he was a top chef, whose best meal was making his fans smile. This encouraged him for some reason. Wataru walked in at that moment, applauding her for being able to drag Tamon out of his nervous breakdown mode. Who'd have thought hiring a housekeeper could rehabilitate him this much? He'd been working obediently lately, all thanks to the chores lifted off his shoulders. Wataru asked her how much counted as household chores, and she answered that it was pretty much anything, even going shopping and taking pets for a walk. Somehow, he could tell they practiced for the meet and greet, and even went shopping together. Utage and Tamon quickly got on their knees, apologizing. To their surprise, Wataru also knelt, begging her to keep helping with Tamon. The truth was, they were a small agency with no connections, so Wataru was happy to dump the depressive zombie on her. Basically, she had to go ahead for anything now. However, her personal desires had to be suppressed. Thinking about him showing off for her, she slapped their face and put her desires away. At the age of 16, Tamon came all alone to Tokyo for his audition. His manager barely took care of him, and he didn't get along well with his fellow idols. It was given that he'd rely on a busybody fangirl who happened to come into his life, so she needed to work hard for him. Out of nowhere, a candid photo of Tamon popped up on her phone. She screamed, startling him. He found her quite interesting, especially the way she randomly yelled. Right now, she was special to him. Tamon was excellent at fan service, hence why he could say stuff that made her so happy. Earlier on, she was just trying to escape reality. Utage thought she was so boring to talk to with her old friend who complained. When she'd been flattened like an empty husk, that's when she came across Tamon on TV. Hearing him say, "I want to make everyone smile," was something she wouldn't find herself uttering even in 100 years. Ever since then, her days have been so fun. His dream became her dream. That was why she didn't need to be special. Just having him show her his dream was enough, or so she thought. Seeing he was wearing the necklace they got at the mall, Utage started blushing. She felt something she couldn't describe. While watching one of Face's commercial shows, Utage giggled to herself. She fantasized about being a trampoline that would catapult them to stardom. As much as romantic fantasies were fun, she didn't want to be the impurity that polluted such a precious space. She'd snap back to reality, freaking out when she remembered Tamon kissing the necklace she picked out. Most of all, what exactly did he mean when he called her special? Over in Tamon's apartment, Utage saw him struggling with the script for tomorrow's show. While scripts were prepared for the idols, there were still some free talk sessions. If this wasn't solid, he was definitely going to break character. Looking at the script, Utage thought it was awful. Tamon also complained about having to meet with Audi. Utage figured they were just close for the sake of the cameras. Panicking, he immediately apologized for shattering her dreams. Due to his nature, he hadn't opened up to the other members that much. He felt like a jerk for swaying people's hearts like some con artist, but there wasn't much that could be done. So he begged to be arrested and thrown into the slammer for fake friend crimes. However, Utage was moved to think he'd be working so hard to keep the fans happy. Plus, he was so good at acting that they never had any doubt. The perfect con artist. She then told him to be proud of his skills, and after making dinner, she left. While thinking of a new recipe to try out, she'd accidentally bump into Audi. With his clean-cut good looks and overflowing privilege, he was considered Face's prince. Both his parents being famous entertainers meant he was a thoroughbred who had been in ads and TV shows since he was in grade school. Not only did Utage bump into this handsome guy, but he was holding her hand. She asked him to keep his hands reserved for Tamon and ran off. Shortly after, she realized she dropped her homemade fan. Going back to Tamon's place, she rang the doorbell. With no answer, she let herself inside. Hearing loud voices in the room ahead, she cracked her glow stick and slowly went to check things out. The sight left her too stunned to speak. Audi was scolding Tamon, calling him a slowpoke and whacking him with Utage's fan because he wasn't done with the script. Noticing her, they tried to play things off by acting all nice. No way was she gonna fall for that ridiculous act. Who did they think they were fooling? Audi was obviously smacking Tamon with her homemade fan earlier, and that was an unforgivable act. Tamon tried to calm her down, but she was too far gone. Filled with rage, she picked up Audi, tossing him outside. Then she went to check on Tamon. He told her that Audi was always like that, so he was used to it. Audi crashed back inside with a flying kick, demanding that she apologize for throwing him out. Mr. Gloomy Hara ended up apologizing instead, blaming himself for everything. He assumed he'd get blacklisted and blackballed for ruining tomorrow's shoot. Utage urged him not to think about it, reminding him that he could influence a whole economy just by standing in place. She then introduced herself to Audi as Tamon's housekeeper. Still, he saw her as one of those crazy fans. No lies there. He dragged the quivering Tamon, questioning what was so good about him. A guy like this being the center of the group made him sick. Utage would grab his hand, making it clear that wherever Tamon stood was the center of the world. It didn't matter if he was sexy and wild or a loser. People like this irritated Audi. He claimed they didn't have a sense of pride and were nothing but absolute pieces of shit. Just before Utage could reply, Tamon interrupted, going, "Tamon is God!" He stood up for her, explaining that she was a kind and brave person who could get mad for the sake of others. She was nothing like the people Audi was talking about. Wataru then showed up, yelling at Audi for breaking the door, and gave him some bubble tea to calm down. While Tamon started breaking down again, Utage encouraged him to get back to work. Wataru fixed the door, and she prepared some drinks for everyone. Before leaving, Tamon promised he'd do his best at the shoot tomorrow, so he asked her to watch him. On the elevator, she'd bump into Audi again. She tried closing the doors, but he'd stop her. Pinning her back to the wall, He warned her not to tell a soul what she saw today. She promised not to tell anyone about his true nature, but he felt she still wanted something in return. He offered to make Tamon do anything for her, but she'd flip the positions, threatening to end his life if he insulted Tamon one more time. Her eyes had bloodlust written all over. Auri wouldn't have to worry about people finding out his true nature. She couldn't care less about those she disliked. She swore to never speak to him again and bid him farewell. During break, Utage worried about Tamon having an enemy working so close to him. She'd squeal with excitement, seeing a notification from the official Face account. They were going to be releasing a new Heartbreak ballad, but they'd be using a new center for this song. The center was a special position reserved for those with only immense talent and popularity. Basically, the group's face. And this was normally Tamon's spot. But he was ready to accept whatever they threw at him. For Utage, this was as good as the end of the world. She rushed over to Tamon's apartment, arguing there was absolutely no reason for him to get replaced. Her face had turned red, fuming with anger. He explained that this project was being done because Auri had wanted to be the center for a while now. He was both popular and talented, so Tamon believed he'd fit right in. Of course, Utage thought Auri was just trying to steal the spotlight. Not really having much confidence, Tamon couldn't blame anyone if he wasn't chosen. Regardless, Utage promised his fans would be there, cheering him on. But if he wanted to make everyone in the world smile, this wasn't the time to be giving up. Crying a river of tears, he confessed that when the project was brought up, he was so frustrated that he cried into his pillow until it was sopping wet. Summer vacation was finally here, and while the world seemed to be excited for festivals and beach trips, Utage and her friends had more important things to worry about. The special program to pick a new center for Face was airing its first episode tonight. If Tamon got judged unfairly, best believe Utage was going to arm herself and attack the agency. She was scared of what she would do if the results weren't in her favor. In order to make sure they could watch the show calmly, Rico decided they should review who Face was. First was the current center, their beloved Tamon, the insanely hot man who was a literal god when he walked. Second was the leader, Kato. He was the approachable one you could actually imagine dating. Next up was Natsuki, the cunningly cute type, a pro idol. Rintaro was more of the mature and mysterious type. Last was Auri, the projected winner. His strengths were how frail and sensitive he was. As the program started, the girls sharpened their vision and focused. The title of this new song was Rain. It took the regrets a man felt when he realized the weight of what he had lost and turned it into a lyrical melody, a ballad about heartbreak. The theme of the first episode would be a visual battle known as Heartache. The idols would try to best express these sentimental feelings from the song, and it would be judged with a point system. Audi went first, and his performance telling a woman not to go while soaking in the rain blew them away. A phenomenal performance, but not beyond Utage's expectations. She was certain Tamon would go beyond what they expected. However, Tamon's performance didn't depict the sadness of a man who had lost something, but the thirst of a king who wanted it all because he wants for nothing. In other words, it didn't fit the song one bit. You couldn't tell that to the girls though. They loved every bit of his display. Why exactly were they choosing another center? That's when the followers of the Church of Tamon realized that his life completely lacked the concept of heartbreak. After the show, Audi teased him for being a total failure. At this rate, he would become the center. Audi was eager to see what Utage's face looked like now. With a demeaning tone, he told Tamon, "Hopefully, she's not sick of you." Back home, Tamon thought his life was over as he sprouted mushrooms everywhere. He couldn't even fall in love with someone, so how was he supposed to imagine what heartbreak felt like? The more he tried, the more he turned into Harihara. It seemed like that was all he could do. Suddenly, they started hearing loud bangs on the ceiling. Audi burst through the door, complaining about the mushrooms. Apparently, he lived upstairs. He started boasting of how he displayed the way a center was meant to be, but Utage didn't care about him at all. He'd called Tamon an idiot, but she believed there was still a chance for him to turn things around. She then asked Audi not to insult Tamon again. He didn't understand why everyone was so obsessed with Tamon, especially Utage, who had seen what he was really like. People had always believed Audi would be the center of Face. All his pride got to his head. He angrily turned to Utage, demanding she come over to him if he became the center. Of liking the video and subscribing to my channel, let me become your center. Because here on my Shoujo Weekly, I've got tons of stories for you to enjoy in the shoujo genre. Not sure where to start? You can check out my completed series playlist. It's filled with over 60 hour-long plus videos for you to fill your time with. You can play them while doing chores, grinding video games, and even to sleep. So come on, hit that subscribe and I'll be your guy. Utage thought Aori was asking her to be his housekeeper and told him he'd have to hire someone else. He demanded she stop coming to Tamon's place so much and open up her schedule. If she knew Tamon was going to win, she shouldn't have a problem with that. Unless she had a feeling he'd lose. Just like that, she agreed to Aori's bet, leaving Tamon in a tough spot. She immediately apologized to him for accepting the bet, but she couldn't bring herself to say Tamon can't win. Even as a lie, Utage told him to pay no mind to it and do his best. However, he wasn't about to let her go. Leaving wasn't an option, and she was willing to do anything to help him win. Tamon had always looked up to idols ever since he was little. He really loved his fans, but falling in love with one person wasn't something he had experienced. He had no idea what love was. The love Utage had for him wasn't the same most people would define. To get some experience, he'd ask her out to a festival, despite the never-ending Tamon fest going on in her brain. This was still a lot for her. But if he was going to sing about heartbreak, he needed to learn about love first. It was said people gathered here in search of love, unaware of what awaited them was a new encounter or goodbyes, the sanctuary for lovers passed down since time immemorial. This was none other than the summer festival. He wanted to go there to find out what love was, so he could win the second round in the competition to decide the center. Going into that kind of dazzling party night all by himself, the sheer amount of positive energy would reduce him to cinders. Crazy to think he got all this information from a love specialist. Either way, Utage thought it was delusional that a lone fan such as herself would be allowed to go with the Tamon to a summer festival. Tamon put off the gloomy Hara act, letting her know she was the only one he could do this with. Out on the balcony, Aori's mind thought about how the fans, the people in the entertainment industry, and even those with no interest in him would at least change their tone a little if they approached him. Yet, Utage wasn't doing any of that, and it annoyed him. He'd see Tamon sneaking out with a paper bag over his head, and this got him even more riled up. At the summer festival, Utage was dressed up and ready. She would do everything she could to help out in Tamon's search for love. As his housekeeper, of course. This was just another form of housework for her. Definitely not romantic. Approaching her, Tamon was stunned by her beauty. Before he could comment on her yukata, she blurted out her excitement at how black hair suited him. Luckily, she was meeting with gloomy Hara. If it were Hari Hara, fireworks would have been shooting out of her head right now. They had no idea Aori was behind a tree spying on them. Utage suggested they visit some stalls, but Tamon went missing. Using his binoculars, he was literally searching for love, but she'd protect him from anyone trying to report. The heat was a lot for Tamon, making him wonder if it was due to all the couples around. But Utage told him it was just the air temperature. He tried to comment on her yukata again, but she'd cut him off, pointing to a guy who was trying to show off to a girl. They wondered if that was love. They'd visit the same stall where Utage had to shoot the prizes. She took the rifle, and with her keen precision, she perfectly hit all the prizes that had to do with face. For her, this was nothing compared to trying to win concert tickets. When Tamon took his turn, all he could win was a yucky stick. Chocolate shiitake flavor. Ugh. If things kept going like this, the only thing he'd have gained was getting bit by mosquitoes. Despair gripped him as he regretted coming here. It was itchy, scary, and hot. Utage reminded him that he had masterfully shot through the hearts of his fans. He was a sniper of love. So, she was certain he'd find out what love actually meant. Shortly after, she'd point him to a couple sharing takoyaki. So, he decided to get some. But she wasn't expecting him to feed her. He looked so hot as he told her to say ah, and that made the fireworks go off, blowing her away. From then on, his attitude completely changed, acting all cool and looking out for her. A world where Tamon was living as a normal person? No way! There was no normal person like this in existence. Utage's head was full on carnival right now, and she wasn't going to be able to help him find any love. She apologized for being such an otaku, but he took fault, feeling he hadn't really understood this love thing well. Once again, gloom filled the air. While Tamon went to get drinks, Utage thought about how she just couldn't see him as a normal guy. On the other hand, Aori was yet to understand if these guys were dating or not, and it was pissing him off. Putting on his mask, he'd approach her and ask about her relationship with Tamon. She told him that Tamon wasn't her boyfriend. She didn't really understand love herself and felt like he was hitting on the wrong person. She thought there were plenty of other cute girls around. Just then, Tamon came back, seeing as Aori bashfully complimented Utage's yukata. She almost seemed sweet here, and it was throwing Aori off. It was like something sparked in him. Taking off his wig, Tamon walked up to them, telling Aori not to talk to her because she was his girlfriend. He then grabbed her and walked away. When they were far enough, he finally complimented how lovely she looked in the yukata, though he'd immediately apologized, thinking he said something horrific. She was happy to hear it. Utage just wasn't used to getting compliments, so it surprised her. At that moment, she saw him as a regular guy. They came to this festival so he could find out what love truly was, but that didn't seem to be going very well. So, Tamon resigned himself to being mocked by others for the rest of his life. He wanted to end things now. Just living was his dark history. Seriously? How did he even manage to pull off his hot personality? He wondered if love really existed. He figured just trying to copy others didn't work. Going places with someone else like this wasn't something he usually did. Utage thought it was better to stop doing things they weren't used to, and suggested they try enjoying their time normally, just as friends. He was moved to tears. The only ones he'd been able to open up to were the stains on his wall. So, just hearing the word friends was a lot for him to handle. He apologized for trying to fly when he was only just a caterpillar. But to her, he was a fallen angel who had lost his wings. And she threatened him for insulting himself. Walking back together, he asked if he could call her Master Kinoshita, since being friends meant they were closer than two strangers. Utage didn't know how to handle being called master by a god himself. She told him to just call her Kinoshita, while she referred to him as gloomy Hara-senpai. But to be honest, she was fine with him calling her whatever he liked. Hearing drums in the distance, they went off to join the dance. Tamon was always working hard, and Utage felt he deserved a moment to enjoy being a high school student. So for now, they could just be friends. As they enjoyed their time together, she wondered if this was what he would be like as a regular student. Shortly after, she brought him some ice cream. Seeing that it was already melting, he rushed to take a bite while it was still in her hand. Her heart skipped a beat, but he couldn't help it because his hands were full and he didn't want her yukata getting stained. Afterwards, they'd head over to a private spot where they could watch the fireworks. Here, Tamon could take off his wig and mask. Utage was a lot more relieved seeing his regular hair color. He had dyed his hair pink during his audition, which caused quite a stir among the fans. Tamon went all out, dyeing it a color he thought was the opposite of himself. Ever since then, when he stood in front of the people, he was Harihara. All the fans fell in love with his pink hair and called pink the color of love. But still, it was his hard work that moved everyone's hearts. Unlike Auri, he didn't feel special, and being a failure, all he could do was work hard. Just knowing there were people out there who would cheer for someone like him filled Tamon with so much joy. That was why he wanted to make everyone happy and smile. The last thing he wanted was to be seen as pathetic. He told Utage, "I want people to like me." Seeing him say those words, she felt like he was the one in love at that moment. Even if he didn't have feelings for one specific person, she figured this was like love to him. And if that was the case, maybe he already knew his answer. She told him that the fact he worked so hard was also love. Raising her fist in the air, the fireworks went off, spreading love throughout the night sky. Her words moved him, and he thanked her, calling her Uta-chan. He wondered if this was also love he was feeling in the moment. But Utage absolutely refused, telling him this was camaraderie from pretending to be friends. A fleeting illusion. She didn't want him having any kind of world-ending misunderstandings. The second round was finally here, a complete 180 from the first round of visual battles. This time, things were going to get much more physical, starting out with a race to run on water. Tamon came out on top. As usual, he struck the heart of his girlfriends all over the world. On another day, Utage would receive a call from work, telling her that someone had specially requested her services. Getting to the house, she was stunned, seeing it was Auri. She told him that the winner of the competition hadn't been decided yet. But he'd pull her inside, claiming this was a separate matter. He would then ask her if she was going out with Tamon. To make such a blasphemous assumption, she was furious. Utage made it clear that Tamon would never settle for one girl. Rather, he was someone who would eventually make all of humanity his girlfriends. She threatened to turn Auri into dust for a sacrilege. Since she wasn't dating, that was fine with him. That was all he wanted to know. Before he could open the door to kick her out, he would slump onto her shoulder. His face was burning red from a fever. When he woke up, Utage had put him in bed and put on a cooling pad to help with his fever. But he wasn't even the least bit grateful. 2 of the 5 rounds to determine the center had ended with Tamon and Auri currently tied for first place. No one knew how it was going to end just yet. And somehow, Utage ended up in a nursing event with the one who wasn't even her bias. Bringing back their discussion from earlier, she mentioned how he brought her here just to find out if she was dating Tamon. That aside, the room was sparkling all around, thanks to her hard work. After all, that was why she came here. Auri didn't understand why she would do that. Didn't she hate him? But she only saw this as her job. He'd ask her to come over tomorrow, but she coldly told him to make appointments over the phone, then took her leave. On her way to Tamon's place, she felt a bit nervous. They hadn't seen each other since the summer festival. Back then, she witnessed various sides of him she had never seen before, but she tried not to let that moment get into her head. At Gloomy Hada's place, he wanted to end it all. Same business as usual. However, it turned out that Auri sent him a picture of Utage at his place. She explained that she went there to take care of him. Tamon had no idea Auri was sick. He didn't come from rehearsals today and told them he was taking the day off. It seemed like he just didn't want the others to see him in a weak state, like some feisty cat. Utage was going to check on him the following day, so she asked Tamon to focus on himself. Over at Auri's place, Utage saw his temperature was higher than it was the previous day. She mentioned that Tamon was worried about him, but he didn't want to hear anything about Tamon. Just like Tamon, Auri was also probably under a lot of pressure during this competition for the center. She wished they could just get along. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. It was Tamon. He came to see how Auri was doing, and even brought some plain white sugar for him. He didn't know what Auri liked, so he just brought sugar? Auri didn't want any of that, and demanded that he leave. Utage would stop him, explaining that Tamon was just scared. He'd yell at him for picking the wrong thing, but Tamon would usually avoid him, so Auri didn't get why he was here. Tamon explained he came because he was concerned, especially since Auri never skipped rehearsals before. Auri would use this chance to put him to work. Utage had cleaned bigger homes before, but this was the first one that had a pool. As she and Tamon began scrubbing, she asked how he felt about Auri. He admitted his fellow idol scared him, and he knew Auri hated him as well, but he couldn't blame him. When he came to Tokyo to audition and was basically a lost puppy, Auri was the one who taught him all kinds of things. And yet, Tamon outshone him, coming in first place. Heartbroken, Auri cried bitterly in a corner, and Tamon was left speechless by the sight of it. Ever since then, Tamon felt he couldn't hold anything against Auri. He'd even be willing to give up the center spot to him. But lately, he'd been feeling like there had to be some other way. Tamon didn't like to compete with Auri when he wasn't his best, so this time, he wasn't holding back. Seeing Tamon's determination sent Utage's spirit to heaven. As he stared at her in angel form floating away, Auri would spray water on him, snapping him back to reality. Tamon then asked him to get over his cold quickly, because he planned to defeat Auri with everything he had. Likewise, Auri was happy to take on the challenge. As they began arguing, it looked like they were finally getting along. Their battle continued, with Auri winning round 3 of the competition for center. Round 4 was a hidden talent battle, and with his irresistible charms, Tamon came out as the winner. With this, he was currently in first place. The fans' support got even more fired up as the rankings kept changing at a dizzying pace. For some reason, Utage and her friends perfectly copied Tamon's dance and shot a dance cover video, with the final round being a singing battle. It would all come down to their abilities. Leaving Tamon's place, she bumped into Auri. At the same time, Tamon saw she had forgotten her fan. Auri thanked her for the other day and started boasting about his win during the 3rd round, but she shot back, reminding him that Tamon won in the 4th round. He then swore to leave everyone in the dust during the last round and win. Recalling that Tamon only liked to compete against Auri at his best, Utage asked him to do his very best. Little did she know, Tamon was nearby listening, but she was sure he would be happy if Auri did his best. Auri would then take back their agreement from before. Instead, he asked her to be his fan if he won. She would then ask him to become Tamon's fan as well if he won, and handed him a Tamon poster. Auri, however, tossed it away. At the studio, Tamon stayed behind to practice his singing more, and Wataru advised him not to overdo it. Back home, Utage found him passed out on the couch, unlike his usual position cowering in the corner. Then, her mind began running wild. She thought about taking a break on his eyelashes, and probably using his cheeks as a slide. Oh my god, such a wild train of thought. Despite living in the same dimension, she thought he was so high res. Everyone who lined up next to him was basically reduced to pixel art. She wondered if this is what it'd be like if Cleopatra reincarnated as a hot guy. Seeing that his face was paler than usual, she covered him with a blanket. While she arranged the table, he suddenly woke up. Looking at her, he recalled when she told Auri to do his best. Tamon then grabbed her from behind, hugging her while half asleep. She could tell there was something resting on her back, but the thought of it being Tamon was unfathomable. It had to be a fantasy, so she focused on getting work done, refusing to even look behind her. The last battle was tomorrow. Soon, everything would be decided. Inside her Tamon's shrine, she prayed for him to be rewarded for all his hard work. The next day, Tamon arrived late in the studio, and the worst thing possible happened. His voice was raspy, except It wasn't just him. Audi would walk in with the same problem. Shortly after, the final battle began. Tamon would be the first to take the mic. As the instrumentals came in, Utage stared desperately at her screen, waiting to hear his heavenly voice. When the idols were done singing, Riko and Yuina felt Tamon did great, but Utage sensed he was holding back his radiance. It seemed like he wasn't doing well either. But being his fan, she remained positive. Meanwhile, Izumi told the idols to prepare for the new song's pre-release, which was around the corner. Then, her eyes darted to Audi and Tamon, questioning their awful performance. They might have deceived others, but she and the judges couldn't be deceived. She let them know that practicing too much and overworking were signs of failure. They needed to be able to perform at 2,000% at any time. Before slamming the door, she told them Face doesn't need any imperfections. While her friends were shopping for fan merchandise, Utage drowned in despair. The more she watched the video, the more it looked like Tamon wasn't doing his best. If he didn't stay the center, she didn't know what she'd do. More importantly, she was worried about his feelings, hoping he wasn't all depressed from doom scrolling for his name. She had never worried this much before meeting him. She questioned if she was a failure as a fan. Audi and Tamon sat beside each other, sulking about their failure. Though Audi claimed this was Tamon's fault, on the other hand, Tamon was overwhelmed with the feeling of not wanting to fail or betray the support of his fans. The more they were nice to him, the happier and more scared he became. There would always be fans who drifted away, and those who stayed, so Audi didn't get why he was thinking that way. It really got Tamon depressed, but Audi didn't like that he was still dwelling on the past. The stadium was packed with fans the next day. Finally, with this performance, they'd know the center of Face. As the curtains came down, Kaito was revealed as the new center. Tears welled up in Utage's and Tamon's eyes. Although Tamon didn't make it, he would always be the center in her heart. Taking down the decorations in her room, Utage recalled Tamon's spectacular performance the other day. Although he couldn't take the center spot, the crowd went wild after their performance. In the end, Tamon gained a ridiculous amount of fans, and Audi established himself as the eternal bridesmaid. Utage was so proud of Tamon for pulling through in the end. She thought he was a god who evolved. She would then take her dog Pochi for a walk. Sensing something, Pochi led her all the way to Tamon's place. Looking up, she saw Tamon standing at the edge of the roof. Not on her watch. In 15 seconds, she ran all the way to the roof and tossed him backward. How could he put his precious body in danger like that? He didn't see any reason to live anymore. If he disappeared, he'd stop suffering. He wanted to isekai and become a creature that made people happy by just existing, like a hamster. Utage told him to calm down. Life for a hamster wasn't easy either. They had to spin their wheel and struggle to peel sunflower seeds. Tamon thought things were hopeless no matter what then. Shortly after, she gave him a drink and calmed him down a little. Filled with guilt, Tamon felt bad about not becoming the center. Even though he received so much support, he messed up the 5th round badly. More than anything, he wanted to sing that song as the center. Utage would try to lift his spirits, letting him know that his performance was amazing. It was burned into their brains. And no matter what, he'd always be smack dab in the center of the hearts of his fans. Not to mention, he had gained an insane amount of fans since then, and the old school fans were all happy that he leveled up. Caring more about what she thought, Tamon asked how she felt. Although she told him that she felt the same way as his fans, he was upset at the fact that she was cheering for Audi too. They seemed very friendly, and before he knew it, she was going to his house. And this made him fear she had become Audi's fan. Unable to hear him clearly, she told him to spit out all that was in his heart until he was satisfied. So, he'd grab her hand, saying, "Please, don't go to Audi." Whenever he remembered her being close to Audi, he lost his will to live for some reason. It had been affecting his work, so he was trying to figure out what to do. The air slowly grew tense. Heartbeats raced. This was the first time he had ever felt like this. He promised to keep doing his best, even if it meant licking boots and eating garbage. Tamon would do anything to make her happy. She immediately pulled back, telling him not to say things like that. Thinking he was just tired, she asked him to return to his apartment, and as she was walking out, he'd pull her back, embracing her warmly. No matter how much of a failure he was, he just wanted her to remain his fan. Otherwise, he would die. Wait, is this a love confession or some kind of threat? For Utage, it felt like the latter. She promised to always be his fan. The thought that he was holding her like this was too much for her, but he'd even tighten his grip. He then let her go, apologizing for his actions. The anxiety had gotten to him all of a sudden. He had no idea what he'd do if her bias changed. Right now, she was looking at the usual gloomy Hara, and she could tell what Hari Hara looked like as well. But the side she saw just now, was this Tamon's B-side or something else? Dang, she said the title of the show, trying to make sense of it all. Her head exploded. Looking down from the heavens, she realized not being the center must have really gotten to him. Regardless, she would always continue supporting Tamon. Kato would come up to the rooftop, and upon seeing the situation, he left, deciding this had nothing to do with him. The following day, during Face's commercial, they thanked their fans for all the support. With Kato as the new center, he was asked how he felt about it. He was the leader of the group because he was the oldest, and now becoming the center, he felt a bit nervous. But of course, he'd do his best and also get advice from Tamon too. As for Tamon, who had been switched out of the center, he was a bit disappointed, but he thought Kato would be able to pull it off, despite being an airhead. And to his girlfriends all over the world, he would show them a new side of Tamon Fukuhara that they'd never seen before. A new side of Face was coming, and everyone also awaited the release of their new song, Rain. After the commercial, Kato would show his real personality. As he scrolled through his fans' comments, things were going according to plan. To him, the fans were just fools who were easy to manipulate. Oh god, he's actually a cocky, manipulative sociopath. The difference in his persona was so intense that it creeped Audi out. Kato would then ask Audi about the mysterious girl he saw with Tama. Audi would try to deny it, but he couldn't fool Kato with his lousy lying. Kato wondered if she was the reason Tama's condition had been so volatile lately. However, Audi made one thing clear. He was going to make her fall for him someday. The rest of the information didn't matter to him. She was an obsessive Tamon fangirl and also his housekeeper. Hearing she was a fangirl seemed to rub Kato the wrong way. Utage was coming back to work at Tamon's place after some time. She hoped he had gotten over the shock of losing the competition for the center. Getting inside, she saw him completely burned on the ground. At least, it was the usual gloomy Hara. She immediately cleaned him up and got him looking normal again. The weak flour he was using had somehow exploded. However, she quickly took notice of his new apron. He apologized for trying to stay clean, but Utage felt the apron was so blessed to be getting that close to him and protecting him. Apparently, he was trying to make a cake to thank her for all the support she'd shown. But no way, she couldn't possibly accept it. Instead, she asked him to focus on his physical and mental health for the future. This only made him believe no one would want to eat something he made, but she'd make it clear that if it were a cake he made, it'd be a gâteau à chocolat. Utage had definitely made cakes for her biases, but she never thought a day would come when the roles would be reversed. After going through the steps, he started the process of sifting the weak flour through a sifter, but he was terrible at this. No wonder a dust explosion happened earlier. Next, he needed to melt the butter in hot water. He ended up dumping the whole butter, causing it to splash on him. Utage decided to watch him from the side, so she could keep a better eye on him. Looking at Tamon reminded Utage when she baked him a cake. On his birthday, his fans made him cakes. It's not like he could actually eat them, but they made him very happy. The cakes were special. Hearing this brought tears to her eyes. She thought she was sure his fans around the world would sob hearing him say that. After all, they all made the cakes filled with their love. He'd put all his feelings into making this cake as well, hoping she'd be able to deliciously enjoy it and keep coming over forever. He hoped she'd never hate him, never betray him, or cheat on him. Suddenly spiraling into a scary mood, he prayed she'd never show any interest in the rest of humanity for all her life. He swore to make it delicious. At this point, Utage feared for her life. He was becoming so obsessive. He was getting better, but was still acting weird. Time passed, and the oven beeped, signaling the cake was ready. Bringing it out, it looked like an ominous creation. On the other hand, Utage was thrilled to see a homemade cake that her bias made. She planned to freeze it and make it her gravestone. Tamon asked her to eat, but she declined because she was still working, and that made him very sad. Still, she couldn't let herself eat it. On her way to the bathroom, he'd block the door, switching to Harihara. He'd tell her again to eat it, even if it was just a bit. His charm sparkled as he softly held her face. Utage was flush, trying to steady her breath. Feeding her, Tamon would say, "Accept it, all my love." She couldn't resist, so she finally ate it. And as expected, it had no taste. After working, she'd sit down to enjoy the cake with him. This was the first time someone had gifted her a whole cake on a completely random day. As she ate it, he stared at her intensely, like his mind was gone. She said it was delicious, and he seemed relieved to hear that. All this while, she'd been treating him like a cute little puppy. But lately, his strange behaviors had her worried that he might not even be from this planet. Recalling what happened earlier, she assumed he flipped his switch on purpose, knowing she wouldn't be able to resist. Looking back on it, this wasn't the first time this happened. It's almost been normal to be so close to him. He was a super idol, who put people everywhere under his spell, and he was just playing a character he created to do just that, meaning finessing one fangirl would be nothing to him, and he definitely finessed Utage. Refusing to let this escalate, she decided to start going home quickly. The distance needed to be maintained. Being overprotective wasn't always love. She needed him to be able to survive on his own. Seeing frosting on her face, Tamon would try to wipe it off, but she asked him to stay back. Suddenly, he flipped the switch again, licking the frosting clean off. Once again, she'd fall for it. He was sulky, gloomy, and always sensitive to others' moods, and that was what made him a sharpshooter. Tamon had always been like that. He figured she'd be okay with what he just did because she thought he was hot. Something dark was awakening in him. Walking through the streets, Utage recalled Tamon licking the frosting off her face. After that happened, she completely lost it. Filled with rage, she demanded that he have more respect for himself, and then she bizarrely made him review the 100 Tamon articles of faith. Letting her anger take over, she immediately ran out. On second thought, maybe she should have been happy about the fact that he personally showed her full-on fan service. However, she still thought someone who was supposed to be a world star shouldn't be handed out so easily. All of humanity needed to respect Tamon. Questioning why he was doing so much for her, she slapped away any thought of him being in love with her. She figured he had to be anxious after losing the competition for center. Since he was letting all that anxiety explode in front of her, it must mean he had no one else to talk to. Wataru was busy as ever. Their producer, Izumi, seemed super scary, and Auri was less of a friend, more of a rival and gorilla. Utage would get a text from Yuina, apologizing for not being able to meet up for their appointment due to a cold. It seemed like she would have to spend the day alone. Just then, a fellow idol fan like herself walked out of a store, blabbering about his bias, Kanpyo. If he had missed out on the rare official merch, he'd never be able to forgive himself. Look at his bag. He must have gotten all the merch. He declared that the world deserved Kanpyo, and as he left, Utage could relate to the kind of love he had for his idol. Suddenly, she came across Tamon playing with one of the Kappa roll machines. Breathing heavily, he told her how happy he was to run into her. Refusing to get too close, she took off before he would transform into Harihara. He gave chase, transforming under his paper bag, and was able to catch up to her, but he tripped over a stone, causing him to crash to the ground. Turns out, he was just struggling to breathe under that bag. Over at the park, she gave him water and scolded him for wearing the paper bag in this midsummer heat. He could have gotten heat stroke. He mentioned he had some downtime from work, which was why he was out having fun. He then offered her some of the unique Kappa rolls he got. Seeing that he was using the money the fans offered him for self-care made her really happy. He wanted to give her one because he got a duplicate, so he asked why she suddenly ran away. She explained that given he was taller than people thought, she felt intimidated having him run at her when he was that big. Utage realized she shouldn't be talking to him. It was a crime that could get her paraded around town, so she bid him farewell immediately. But he asked if they could have lunch together, but she quickly declined. Heartbroken, he threatened to end his life on the spot with a blade, but she'd snatch it from him, letting Tamon know that only love and cheers were allowed to be pointed at him. Since today was his activities day, she was making her pilgrimage and going to places he'd already been to. Switching to Harihara, he offered to give her a tour. Utage's head would explode, so she had to be carried. First, they stopped at a location where he had a shoot the other day. The shop here had become very popular thanks to him. Next up was a spot where people were worshipping the ground Tamon had stood on. These people really need to get a life. Someone then came by and secretly took a picture of them. Afterwards, Utage and Tamon went to a park to enjoy some snacks. She arranged his figurines around the food and began aggressively taking pictures. It was the funnest thing in the world for her. So, he would switch to his Harihara persona, asking her to take pictures of him together with the figurines. Seeing so many hot Tamons would cause her to boil up and fizzle out, leaving behind her remains. If someone who wanted to express themselves was an artist, and someone who wanted to entertain others was an entertainer, it went without saying which group Tamon belonged to. The rest of their hangout involved Utage's head exploding whenever Harihara got close. How could she explain that Harihara must not be handed out to sate one girl's personal desires? Then, she got an idea to give him the extra ticket so they could go see a movie. It was less of a movie and more of a documentary on how the center of face was picked. Utage had seen this 10 times and cried all 10 of those times, but she felt it might be torture for Tamon to watch it. Still, she wanted him to know that she liked the Tamon who worked hard for everyone, not just her. Staring at her, Tamon saw how captivated and happy Utage was. Even if he was suffering, she didn't want him to forget that his dream was right here. She asked if he could now see how valuable Tamon was. However, he barely looked at the screen. It was too much torture. But he did notice she had a lot of fun. She didn't have those expressions before seeing the movie. It was all because she loved Tamon. He wanted to see those expressions again. If he made his dream come true, she'd be the happiest girl in the world. Hearing that made him joyful. He would then give her his rare kappa roll before running off. Tamon would return to work with full energy. He'd even thank Wataru for all he was doing, leaving him completely freaked out. Wataru would have to thank Utage. Because of her, he had one less bald spot. The next day, Utage rang up Tamon's apartment, but he wasn't picking up. She'd be stunned as Kaito showed up to greet her. Kaito was trusted by the Church of Tamon followers. He loved his group mates and had the friendliest, most relatable persona. She wondered what Face's leader and current center was doing in front of her. He'd invite her over to his place, mentioning that Tamon and Auri were there as well, and he wanted to thank her for taking care of them all this time. So she'd go with him. Apparently, he lived right next to Tamon. Do all these guys just live here? What in the plot convenience? As he opened the door, she noticed the inside was incredibly dark, but the layout was just like Tamon's. Looking at the footwear, she could tell which belonged to whom in a single glance. Sitting with Tamon and Auri, Keita would show them the picture he took of Tamon and her, asking them to explain themselves. He questioned if Utage was really just a housekeeper, and Tamon explained that they did meet just by coincidence, though they had a lot of fun. Feeling left out, Auri would boast about inviting her over to his place twice. Keito called them pathetic. They were basically wrapped around her finger. He let Utage know that they planned to be world famous. This was their moment of truth. He was absolutely going to make Face a group that represented this generation. She'd fall in love with that charisma, thinking he was truly a leader who cared for his group, only for him to show his true colors the next second. His real plan? To swindle the fans out of their money and go down in history as a millionaire. As for Tamon and Auri, he saw them as the dual poster boys of Face. He told Utage to stop deceiving his precious golden geese, calling her a wicked fangirl. Now finally, she could see him for who he truly was. To him, fans were only meant to act as their sustenance. Auri wouldn't stand for his insults, and Tamon asked him not to speak to his fan like that. Auri agreed as well. Keito was a real asshole. As they began fighting, Utage realized things weren't really going well with the other members. There was no way Tamon could be mentally stable in this situation. An outsider like herself couldn't possibly butt into their problems. Keito saw fans as terrifying creatures and ruthless beasts who engaged in bloody quarrels with each other. They even rivaled the CIA in gathering intel and tailing others. A certain part of his fandom was definitely off their rocker, and he felt Utage was a prime example. He believed she was the reason Tamon and Auri failed in the competition for center. He'd tell her never to visit them again if she meant well. This was an order as their leader. In a way, she felt he was right. After all, she was a Tamon fan, but even so, she didn't want to imagine that Tamon's hard work, worries, and smiles were all for nothing. However, whenever she was around him, it was solely as his housekeeper, and as Tamon's housekeeper, she had done everything she could for him. Besides, Wataru was the one who officially hired her, and in that next second, the very man would burst into the room. He knew she was here, thanks to her dropping her fan outside. He'd suddenly ask her to participate in Face's training camp. This was for a show, to hit the ground running. As the new Face, they were going to have the idols strengthen their bonds. Without a doubt, Utage wanted to watch this. Apparently, the part-timer they hired to help with the show wouldn't be able to make it. The real Face was a mess, and they couldn't have fans finding out about this. Utage had no idea how to do talent agency work, but Wataru assured it would be all fine. Tamon would defend her, mentioning how it was bothersome. However, Wataru let him know that if they hired someone new, he wouldn't be able to let his guard down for a second. Tamon's true personality hadn't been revealed to the rest of the world, so Utage could be trusted to keep her mouth shut. Still seeing her as nothing but a rotten fan, Keito swore to reveal who she truly was during the camp period. Auri and Tamon preferred having her there though. With that decided, Wataru asked her to prepare in 3 days. Without even deciding for herself, Utage found herself in a huge mess. Summertime was finally here. There were watermelons, ice cream, and barbecues. Tamon was excited for it all. Natsuki reminded everyone to put on their sunscreen. Even Rentaro looked like he was having fun, flexing his muscles. But he wouldn't be the only one. Tamon would show off his hot body too. And now, Face's super exciting summer vacation began. Watching the commercial, Yu Arimoto commended them for being unique. Apparently, he was a famous director in the business. He was particularly interested in Tamon, because if someone like that messed up, it would look great on TV. There were 15 staff members in total, and the only ones who knew about Tamon's true nature were Wataru and Utage. She could only hope Tamon could stay as Harihara for 3 days and 2 nights. When they got to the beach, the idols played rock, paper, scissors to decide who would be the referee. Natsuki ended up with that role, while the others split up into 2 teams for volleyball. Utage tried to avoid staring at the one whom she considered heaven on earth. But who was she fooling? Taking a peek at Tamon, she wondered if this was the Louvre of beautiful faces, or maybe it was the British Museum of Fine Bodies. She even called it the Shoso-in of bursting smiles. Her very personal World Expo had begun. As the cameras cut, the volleyball flew over to her. Tamon rushed over to make sure she was alright, but she freaked out. Being so close to his hot body, she recited a mantra to get herself under control before handing the ball back to him. While trying to catch her breath, she could sense Keito's ominous aura being directed at her. She needed to do her best to make sure he didn't decide that she was a crazy fan. Meanwhile, Aori was jealous of how she was fawning over Tamon, although he felt it was better than acting like that towards just anyone. Due to his fury, he served the ball too hard, and Tamon missed it. After filming, the idols went to their room to take a break, and Wataru asked Utage to go check on them. Getting to their door, Utage said she brought some snacks. Keito answered with an angry look, asking if she came to sneak into their beds, as if she'd be that obvious. At the same time, Aori was yelling at Tamon to stop crying. Keito was yelling at the both of them because they didn't want to leave their rooms, and he proceeded to yell again, telling them this was just day one. They still had another shoot after this. But his yelling only served to make Tamon cry again. Aori started yelling at him to keep it together, but Utage stopped them and used her fans to get Tamon back to being Harihara. In turn, he was able to get the other two to switch to their idol personalities as well. At night, the boys gathered up for some grilled skewers. Walking by, Utage was glad to see how they were all acting professionally. She couldn't believe they were the same people from earlier. Soon after, they were done with all the shooting for day one. After that, Utage was asked to put away some equipment in the storage shed behind the gym. While Aori was staring at her, he could see her staring at Tamon, and it made him feel so envious. Later, after having her bath, Utage got a call from Aori. He told her she forgot her fan and that she should come to his room to get it. When she got to his room, he was surprised to see her dressed in a yukata. She apologized for not being presentable, but he never said that. She asked about Tamon, but Aori didn't care where he was. Then, he gave her back the fan. She apologized, explaining she brought so many with her that she didn't notice one was missing. This was to account for every issue Gloomy Hara could run into during the camp, and she prepared all the variations she could. Aori told her she was gross for this. Then again, he admitted how tenacious she was. No one was this dedicated. Suddenly, they heard Keito's voice outside. He was trying to make sure Utage hadn't snuck into Aori's room, so Aori quickly hit her before Keito walked in. Seeing no sign of her, Keito reminded Aori that fans were devils, and then he left. Aori took off the blanket, revealing Utage hiding underneath. As she thanked him, he patted her head, questioning why it had to be Tamon and not him. Utage didn't know how to respond. Her feelings for Tamon were so great that it was hard to explain. So, she decided to read the sutras she had compiled over the last 2 years, not wanting to hear a single sentence from it. Aori kicked her out and called her a big dummy. Walking back, she bumped into Tamon, whose head was covered in clothes. He didn't like to bathe with others, so he was quite exhausted. She found it funny, considering he could barely keep his clothes on while he was Harihara. She apologized for her outfit, explaining she came to get her fan from Aori. Hearing Aori's name, Tamon suddenly switched to Dark Hara. Either way, he hoped she was fine. Thinking about it now, he felt it was quite selfish of him to ask her to come along. He apologized for only thinking about himself. This work was new to her, so he asked if she was doing okay, and if Aori had been impossible to deal with, or whether Keito was being mean to her again. But she assured him that she was fine. He needed only to worry about himself. That was why she came along as his housekeeper. After that, she bid him farewell. The next day, the idols continued their filming, from having breakfast to visiting a temple to stopping by at some stalls. All while this was happening, Keito's eyes monitored Utage. For the last scene of the day, they were shooting a test of courage. The director asked someone to go check on the speakers in the storage, so Utage volunteered to do it. Getting to the storage room, the door was suddenly shut behind her, locking her inside. With the whole commotion about her not being back, someone mentioned there were 2 storage sheds, and the speakers weren't in the one behind the gym. Worried about her, Tamon went off to look for Utage. Utage kept banging on the door, hoping someone would come. As she began to lose hope, that's when Tamon came to her rescue. He was glad she was okay. He had no idea what he'd do if he found her as a corpse. Going inside, the door closed behind them. Great. Now 2 of them were stuck. So much for being a savior. With Utage screaming for someone to come save them, Tamon was slowly spiraling. Despair took hold of him. What if the door never opened again, and both the shoot and show were ruined? Worse, what if they ended up both socially and physically hurt? Utage wouldn't mind if it were just her, but she couldn't have Tamon ending up wrinkly. So, she tried to calm him down telling him that someone would definitely come open the door once they noticed he was missing. Everyone else went looking for them, but they searched the wrong storage shed. Utage still assured Tamon that everything would be alright. But deep down, she had no idea what she'd do if the shoot was ruined. Tamon could tell she was tired, even though she tried to deny it. There was no way she could have made those fans instantly either. He figured she must have made them after hearing about the training camp. Utage was moved that he noticed, and she finally admitted she was a bit exhausted. Even though she barely noticed it herself, Tamon had been watching her. After that, someone finally came to their rescue. When they came out, Utage apologized for being careless. Tamon explained that the door was broken and had shut on its own. Kaito came to check on him, clearly trying to make sure Utage hadn't tried anything funny. That's when Arimoto apologized, admitting it was all his fault. He had actually rigged the storage shed so it would only open from the outside, all because he wanted to get footage of Tamon being genuinely surprised. Tamon walked up to him and told him there was no need for any of that. He and his fellow idols would make sure the show was plenty entertaining. The others agreed. They'd do their best. Face had the absolute best members, and Tamon could count on them. With that settled, they continued the shoot. The final day of filming arrived, and everything went by so fast. While Utage was setting up food under the tent, Kaito approached her. He mentioned that Tamon didn't like carrots, so they needed to be removed. He also told her to make sure the knives cut well, so Tamon wouldn't hurt himself. Thinking about it now, Utage realized Kaito actually cared about Tamon. When he complimented Tamon while they were together as face, she could tell it was genuine. She knew because he couldn't move people's hearts with insincere words. Kaito had a lot of fans. Of course, that meant he also had the most passionate fans, the kind that could be a bit insane. Tamon and Aori weren't lying when they talked about what's important, so Utage figured Kaito was the same, because when you're a fan, both time and money melted away instantly. There was no time left to spend on anyone shallow. Kaito insisted he was doing it for the money, but watching Tamon pissed him off, because when Tamon got his act together, he was more awesome than anyone. Utage asked Kaito to try being a little nicer to Tamon, but he brushed her off, telling her he didn't need her advice. After all, he was the leader of Face. After that, Tamon's cooking session began filming. Kaito was unbelievably good at cooking. Apparently, he used to help out in the kitchen when he worked at a cafe, and he had 5 little brothers whom he took care of while his parents were working. By evening, everything was finally a wrap. Utage came across Tamon by the beach. He was taking pictures of a hermit crab and of the ocean to show her later. He wanted her to have something since they'd been so busy. Looking at the pictures, Utage blushed and started laughing. She thought it was very much like him to do things like this. Tamon mentioned that he found out why Kaito decided to become an idol. Kaito usually said it was for the money, but the truth was that he wanted to help his parents pay for his little brother's school fees. That way, his family could smile. And now, Tamon wanted to do his best with Kaito as the center of Face. Likewise, Utage would do everything she could to support the new brand of Face. Suddenly, the waves washed over and drenched her. Tamon quickly took off his jacket, trying to dry her before she'd catch a cold. Being so close to her, he complimented how good her complexion looked. Meanwhile, Aori walked in from behind, and upon seeing what looked like a kissing scene, he dropped his drink and ran away. Recalling what he had seen at the beach, Aori couldn't stop replaying the scene in his head. Had Tamon kissed Utage or not? The uncertainty gnawed at him, leaving him restless and unable to focus. To make matters worse, his summer vacation homework was due the day after tomorrow. It wasn't like attention was something new to him. Famous morning drama actresses and charismatic top models had all sought his company before, but none of it ever stirred his heart. And yet now, his emotions were completely unsettled. Just then, he spotted Utage standing by the roadside. Flustered, he instinctively ducked out of sight before she could notice him. Meanwhile, Utage was in a bind of her own. Between work and devoted fan activities, she had completely neglected her homework. Just like Audi, she had to finish everything by the day after tomorrow. As if fate were mocking her, a large Face commercial began playing on a nearby screen. Her eyes sparkled as she hurriedly pulled out her phone to record it. The ad promoted Face's super exciting summer vacation. If she wanted any chance to watch it properly, hopefully even in a worldwide stream, she'd need to complete her homework first. At 16, she could pour boundless energy into being a fan, but not necessarily into academics. She joked to herself that she'd be more motivated if she could deposit 1,000 yen into Tamon's account for every problem she solved. Dang, when am I gonna get some viewers who wanna do that for me? Shaking herself back to reality, she decided to head to a cafe to study. From a distance, Audi watched her leave. Maybe he should just ask her directly about her relationship with Tamon. Determined, he began tailing her, only for her to run into gloomy Hara. Tamon had just picked up his school uniform from the dry cleaners. The new term was starting soon. He carried 2 uniforms, one of them belonging to Audi. It suddenly dawned on Utage. Tamon went to school. He was a high school student, and not just any school. the same one as Audi. The realization nearly took her breath away. Of course, his schedule was far from normal. Makeup lessons and shoots often filled his nights and days off. Still, the idea of a Tamon who attended school like anyone else felt strangely grounding. Utage admitted she hadn't finished her homework. Her siblings and dog were too noisy at home, and both the library and community center were closed. Seeing her dilemma, Tamon casually invited her to study at his place. She flatly refused. She would never enter that sacred space for anything other than work. So, he suggested the park instead, mentioning he needed to memorize a script for tomorrow and would grab some sandwiches. Before they could take another step, Kaito appeared, scolding them for being careless about their surroundings. Within moments, he had whisked them away to his own apartment. Kaito insisted they study here, and even offered prepared meals from his fridge, but with strict conditions. The drawer was not to be pulled out more than 15 centimeters, and the fridge door had to be closed within 3 seconds. His meticulousness bordered on obsessive. He then yanked the bag off Tamon's head and scolded him for going out without sunscreen, dabbing it onto his face. Kaito reminded him that his face was a product that printed money. Watching the two interact, Utage noticed they seemed closer than before. Though Kaito barked at her bias, she felt happy that Tamon had someone like him. Kaito even handed Tamon ground coffee to help regulate his sleep schedule. But as Utage observed their closeness, admiration slowly gave way to a flicker of jealousy. If only she had been born a guy, maybe even a member of Face, she could stand beside Tamon like that. When Kaito left for a shoot, Utage couldn't understand why he was helping her. After all, he had once despised fans, as if they killed his parents. But Kaito had seen her dedication during training camp and noticed how professionally she handled Tamon's chores. He had come to realize not all fans were unhinged. Before leaving, he even apologized. Tamon mentioned that Kaito had been more vocal lately, complaining instead of bottling things up. Rather than exploding all at once, he now expressed his feelings little by little. Tamon preferred it this way. As the precious leader of Face, Kaito deserved to speak honestly. Hearing this, Utage concluded Kaito was truly a good person. Outside the door, Audi eavesdropped, telling Kaito to buzz off or he'd punch his glasses. Bro, what? This is his place. Inside, Utage finally began her homework. Tamon watched her with mild confusion. It had only just occurred to him that she was actually a high school student. His comment embarrassed her. Most of the time, she existed around him in the context of work. He jokingly told her to think of him as a useless distraction so she could focus. She shot back without hesitation that Tamon is humanity's greatest treasure. As she worked, he noticed she excelled in literature. Whenever she encouraged him, she always had so many words, so many ways to express herself. But science and math were another story. Second-year content had become more difficult, and she struggled. Tamon was genuinely surprised. He had thought she could do anything. Was there truly such a flawless person in the world? Still, he admired how hard she tried. She dismissed his praise, saying she was only doing what was expected. But from his perspective, even ordinary tasks felt challenging. His handwriting was so messy, he couldn't read his own notes. Sometimes he clipped his toenails too short and bled. The fact that she managed so much impressed him deeply. His compliments made her heart flutter. When she got stuck on a math problem, he leaned closer to help. As she gazed at him, memories of the beach resurfaced, and her face burned. But the moment was interrupted when Tamon suddenly berated himself, calling himself a rotten boiled egg for forgetting things again. He was really crashing out, but she quickly snapped him out of it, still listening from the outside like a total weirdo. Audi thought this might be his chance to step in, to help her, and win her over. So delusional. Tamon then offered to use his Harihara personality to help her, but she felt like it'd be a waste. However, it wasn't a waste to him. She was always so strong and cool. Only in Harihara's presence did she change. And honestly, that was a win for him, though he felt bad about it. Regardless, she was always there for him whenever he was crying and falling over. So he wanted to do something special for her as well. Not the music or photo version of him, but the Tamon in front of her right now. Blushing hard, she couldn't help but stare. Audi thought to budge in and ask him what he was curious about, but the thought of them actually dating scared him. Audi's father, Toshikazu Sakaguchi, was a leading actor who represented Japan. It went without saying that he was handsome. His mother, Shiori, was a singer who defined a generation. Of course, she was beautiful, and Audi was currently a new idol in the spotlight. Everyone would agree that his good looks rivaled any national treasure. The educational policy of the elegant Sakaguchi family was a bit different from other households. Being that he inherited his parents' super genes and was born into this world, his father let him know that he was a winner amongst winners just by being born. Everything went ridiculously well for him, but that was only by living a mediocre life. He'd never be a winner in the entertainment industry because his parents would continue to be winners. Whether he liked it or not, standing on the same stage as them meant he'd be compared to them and always be disappointed. Having to face a giant obstacle known as his parents was the fate of second-generation talent. Audi really wanted to be on TV too, which meant he'd have to surpass his parents. They reminded him of the family motto, strength is power. From that moment on, he swore to be the winner. Outside Keito's door, he reminded himself of those same words. Tamon's relationship with Utage didn't matter. He'd suddenly barge into the place, saying he'd teach her how to do her homework. When it came time for tutoring, he felt Tamon was in the way. Utage focused on Tamon, reminding him that he was about to say something earlier, but he told her not to worry about it. Audi's presence definitely wasn't helping, and his stinging insults only served to make Tamon more depressed. Of course, Utage would defend him, feeling like he wasn't being useful. He asked her what he could do to help. With the sincerest look in her eyes, she asked him to simply exist. But that wasn't what he was asking. However, Audi would decide to use him as an errand boy, asking him to get a Shine Muscat Daifuku and Terrine de Marans. Utage wouldn't back off, but Tamon was off before she knew it. Turning her attention to Audi, she asked if he was actually smart. In her eyes, he was just a wild gorilla. He boasted of his academic prowess. He had spent 10 years in showbiz. In order to survive, he needed to be likable rather than unapproachable. In the end, no one could run away from what worked. Determined to get her attention, he would switch to idol mode. Captivated by his charm, she couldn't say no to him, especially with him addressing her by first name. The background around him was suddenly all see-through. He was so transparent that people said there was nothing more transparent than the beaches at Paolao or Audi Sakaguchi. His plan was to make her take this head on and fall for him. Audi was only getting started. He'd pull out a seat for her, give her notes, and praise her. With this reliable youngest member act, Utage wouldn't stand a chance. Maintaining his innocence, her heart was struck. Audi thought he finally had her, but he'd be disappointed. She was only charmed because she got to see what Tamon always saw all the time. So much for trying to win her heart. Audi's act didn't even faze her. At the grocery store, Tamon wondered what Utage's favorite fruit was. If he had actually asked her, she'd probably say it was him. In the end, he didn't know what she liked, but he wanted to know more about her. Just as he got back, he'd be stunned to see Audi holding her hands. A dark aura began emanating from him. He walked to Audi and took his hands off her, letting him know Utage didn't like that. After that, she and Tamon started talking, leaving out Audi. Was she never going to look his way? Utage didn't approve of what he did earlier. He didn't seem like himself. Considering he had lots of fans, she asked he take care of that pure and sincere side of him, whom was loved by everyone. Seeing her cute smile, he was flush. Audi thought he only wanted to get her to look his way because of his pride, and because he didn't want to lose to Tamon as an idol. But that wasn't it at all. Audi was in love with Utage. Ooh, he is getting serious. Is anyone here an Audi fan over Tamon? We all know he's gonna lose, right? I mean, the show is called Tamon's B-Side. Subscribe if you want to see the next episode where he gets disappointed. But for now, watch his next video. It's me, Comfy T. I'll see you all in the next one.